Hey there, in this video, I'll show you how to make walk cycles in Rive. I made two versions of this video. There's the long form version, which you're watching now, which I'll walk you through everything that goes into creating a walk cycle, making sure that the rig is set up, and then some different things that we can do to make different types of walk cycles like you're seeing here. There is a short version that just goes through the high level concepts, and I'll link that either up here or up here, maybe up here, but definitely down in the description if you want to see a shorter version of that. So with that being said, let's hop into it. So the first thing that we're going to do is take a look at the rig and just show you how everything is set up. Now, if you know some things about how bones and vector characters work, then this should all be pretty straightforward. But if not, we'll take a look at this really quickly. So we've got our main bone chain here, and that is for our hips, our chest, and our head. Now, the head is just a hierarchical connection between the head bone, because we're not going to be tilting the head so much that the rig actually breaks. And we do actually have some binding and weighting done here on the body so that as our chest bone bends, we can get a nice bend in the chest and body area. Now, the arms and legs are just strokes, and they've been weighted to two different bones. So we've got this upper arm bone and lower arm bone, and you can see that this lower vertice here is set to detached handles, and that allows us to weight this handle here to our bones and have it share influence. So let me actually show you that. No. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at the rig of the character. Now, the character setup is pretty simple. If you've messed with bones and things like that before, then this should be pretty easy to understand. If you haven't, then we have some other videos on bones, hierarchical connection, binding and weighting, stuff like that. But let's just walk through this rig together. So we've got our main bone chain, and that's going to be our hips, our chest, and our head. And the head group is just a hierarchical connection with the head bone. I didn't do any binding and weighting there. I did do a little binding and weighting for the chest so that our body actually bends whenever we bend the body bone. And then the arms and legs are simply strokes. The arm has 2 bones and the legs are using 3. And then I've also added this control for the hips. The reason that I'm using this instead of animating the hip bone is you can see that the hips are slightly rotated. So if I want to animate the X or Y, it's animating both. It was changing both the X and Y properties of it. And they're slightly tilted. So if I set it up here on this control, if I want to move the character just in the X, I have control over that, or just in the Y, I have control of that as well. So that's why I like to set up this extra little hip control. Now let's quickly look at how the arms and legs are set up. I've got the same bone set up for both of them. The important thing to note here is when we look at the stroke, we've got the detached handles, and this handle right here is what we're going to bind and weight to both of the bones. They're going to share influence so that we can get that nice bent arm shape that we're looking for as we animate the lower arm bone. And it's the same thing on the knee. We've got this vertice here is set to detached. So we've got this handle that we're using for the knee, and then this one is just going out this way for the foot, but we also have an additional vertex that's acting as the foot. Now, the big difference with the rig is that on the arms, I'm not using IK constraints, but on the legs, I actually want to set those up. And to do that, let's set up the bones for the heel control here. So we need to select the lowest bone in the leg chain and hit the plus button next to the constraints, select IK, increase the bone count, and you can see that that now includes this bone here, which means it's also included in the constraint. And then we can set our target to this heel control. And now when we move this heel control, you can see that our bones are bending. Now, right now, they're bending in the wrong direction. This is kind of like, I don't know, like a mech leg or something like that. And we're animating a human, so we want the bones to rotate the opposite direction. So we can go back into the constraint properties, hit this invert direction toggle, and now our bones are going to deform in the correct direction, or rotate in the correct direction. All right, so we need to add one more IK constraint here for the toe, so that our toe is following this point here, or this group. So now we have control of the toe, but we're not actually going to be animating using this control. What we're going to do is when we want to animate the foot, we're just going to rotate this foot or the heel control here. And so that is going to keep all of the animation keys for our leg, or at least the majority of them, on this single control here. So that's going to simplify our timeline and require us to use less keys to animate things. So we've looked at the legs, we've looked at the arms, we looked at the overall rig of the character. Just remember that the arms are children of this chest bone here, so that when we rotate the chest, the arms move along with it. And then the legs, these bones here, are children of the hip bones, so that when we move the hips up and down, those are connected there. So let's hop over to animate mode and start working on these walk cycles. Okay, so here we are in animate mode, and let's go ahead and rename our first animation and call it normal walk. So we're going to go through how to create a normal walk cycle first, and then I'll show you some things that you can do to tweak this animation to convey different moods and things like that. So let's adjust our timeline first, and we want to give ourselves some extra time because we're going to be using roughly 1 second or 60 frames to create our walk cycle with, but we want to give ourselves some extra space on the timeline, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and extend the timeline to 3 seconds and then create a work area that is centered on the timeline. So between 1 second and 2 seconds. So that gives us a second area there to work in. Then I can turn on the loop so we have a nice looping animation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of extra time to this loop here, because I used to make walk cycles that were only a second in duration, but they feel a little too fast for me. So I'm going to add an extra 10 frames at the beginning and an extra 10 frames at the end. So now we're going between 50F here and a 10F past 2 seconds. So we've got, I think, we've got 80 frames to work with. And this is going to slow our walk cycle down just a little bit. Now, the process that we're going to use to actually create the animation, instead of focusing on the different poses that you might normally focus on, or key poses that you might normally focus on when you do like traditional animation, we're going to take a very procedural approach at this. The first thing that we're going to do is animate the legs, and we're first going to focus on the x-axis motion, then the y-axis, and then we're going to get the foot rotating, and then we're going to animate the arms, the body, the head, and then go back and readjust all our timing and stuff like that until the animation feels right. Going through this approach is going to make creating walk cycles a lot easier, I promise. All right, so the way we want to start is first with the legs, and we're going to animate that x-axis. So I'm going to position my legs on the opposite sides of the body. So the front leg, I'm going to go ahead and move to the back first, and the back leg, I'll move up and just position those where I want them. And then we'll create our second pose. So we'll go here to 30 frames. It's right there in the center of the timeline. And let's switch these leg positions like so. Just want to make sure we're happy with the pose. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to be focusing on poses, but these two poses are the only poses that I'm concerned with. All right. So now let me toggle back and forth and just make sure that those are relatively symmetrical. There's a little bit more bend in this. Something like that. And then the back is slightly bent like that. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with that. So now what we can do is, since we're creating a looping animation, we want to make sure that the keys at the beginning match the keys at the end. So I'm just going to copy these keys, paste them to the end there, and I'm going to add cubic interpolation there, and then we'll preview the animation. So right now, it looks like our character is ice skating, which is exactly what we want, because now we're going to focus on the Y motion of our legs to start making our character look like he's walking. So I'm going to start with the front leg, and I'm going to open up my animation keys here and delete all the Y keys out. Key the current Y position, and then about 10 frames forward from now, I'm going to lift the leg up like this, and then return it back to its original position in the next pose, just like that. All right, and then add cubic interpolation. And then the foot is going to stay attached to the ground as it slides back. So I can just take this key and paste it onto the end. You don't really need to add that key, but I'm going to do it anyways. All right. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the back leg. It's the same exact keys. So let me delete all these. So the Y is going to stay the same as the foot pulls through. So we can set the same Y key there and there. And then 10 frames later, we'll lift the foot up like so. And then return it to its original position when it gets to the front. Like that. Throw cubic easing on everything. Okay, so our walk cycle is starting to come together. Now, one of the things that we need to do is animate the toe, because as this foot lifts off the ground, your toe actually pushes down. So we want to make sure that we're animating that. So let's go back to our front leg, key the initial rotation, and then when the foot gets to the highest point, let's rotate the foot down so that it looks like that toe is actually pushing the foot off the ground. And then somewhere here, we want the foot to swing back forward. We'll say there. We'll just keep the timing the same. So 10 frames to lift the foot and rotate it forward. And then we'll have it swing forward during the entire animation, or through this section of the animation. And then we'll say it takes 10 frames to flatten back out. It's right here, just like that. And then we'll add cubic interpolation there. Perfect. Now, instead of animating these rotation keys over, what I can do is copy these rotation keys, select the back heel, and paste those where they need to go. So this is where the back heel comes off the ground, so we could just paste those keys there. It's already got the right interpolation, and so it's going to make it look right as we go through there. Now that foot is actually pushing into the ground, so we might need to lift this foot up just a little bit higher, a bit of there. Okay, that looks better. All right, cool. Now, before we move on, I actually want to change the interpolation of our legs going back and forth. Typically what I like to do is have linear interpolation as the foot pulls through from front to back. So that's linear, and then cubic as it lifts up off the ground and swings forward. Like that. All right, let me match that up on the second one, or on the front foot. So that needs to be cubic. And then this one right here needs to be linear. Just like that. Okay, cool. So we've got the legs working. That's the most difficult part of this animation. But if you follow this timing with this easing, then you'll be able to replicate this walk cycle really easily. Now we need to add in the rest of the body's motion. So let's start with the hips first and just get our character sort of reacting to the steps that it's taking. So I'm going to key the initial Y position here, and on 10 frames later, so as this leg is coming off the ground, we'll drop the body just a little bit, not too much, because actually the distance that you drop the body down and raise it up will actually give it a little bit different mood. So you want to be careful moving the body up and down too much. So we'll have it go down there and then rise up, and then we need to repeat this right here. So down, up. We'll add cubic interpolation there and just take a look at that. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now that we have the body moving, let's add in the motion of the arms. So let's do the same thing that we did with the legs and just focus on the X movement first, and then we can add in the arms swinging. Now remember, when you walk, your arms are moving in the opposite direction of the leg that's on the same side. So when the front leg is back, we want the front arm to be forward, and the back arm to be back. And then in the opposite pose, we'll have the back arm back, or the front arm back and the back arm forward. And then we can copy these keys, paste them at the end, add in that cubic interpolation. All right, so now let's add a little swing to the arms to make them act a little more naturally. So we'll have the arms swing forward when it's in the front and swing back when it's in the back, to the opposite when it goes the opposite direction, like this. Then we can copy those keys, paste them here. I'm just going to reapply the interpolation. Okay, so we've got the arms swinging. I'm also going to add a little bit of motion to this bottom arm, the bottom part of the arm. So we'll say it swings forward like that, swings back when the arm is moving backwards, and then goes back to the same point to close the loop. Add the cubic interpolation there. All right, and let's do the same thing with the back arm. So swing it back just a little bit in the back. Swing it forward when it's in the front. Copy that key and paste it on the end. Add the interpolation. And there we go. Cool. All right. Last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of bob to the chest and the head. So I'm going to grab both of these, and when the character moves down, we want the head and the chest to bob just a little bit, not too much. Maybe like that. Okay. And then as he goes back up, have it reset back to that original position. So basically these keys are matching the body movement. Just like that. Okay, so all of the keys that we need to create the walk cycle have been created. One of the main problems that we have here is that all of our animation keys are or all of our poses and things are starting and stopping at the same time. And so what I mean by that is the hips and the feet are starting their motion at the same time, and they're ending their motion at the same time. The arm is moving forward and back, swinging forward and back at the same time. As the body drops down, the head and the chest are animating at the same time. And realistically, all of these things are going to be happening at different times. All of our timings need to be offset. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to offset some of our timings. Now, I'm going to do 2 walk cycles for this. So the first one, I'm going to call this normal walk, no offset. And we'll just leave that how it is. Then I'm going to duplicate this and rename this one normal walk with offset. And then we'll look at them side by side later so you can see the difference. And then you can decide whether or not you want to add this offset to your animation. Okay, so when we're thinking about a walk cycle and how it actually works, the first thing that's going to move is the hips. The hips are going to drive things forward first. So we want these hips to be the first parts that move, and then we want the feet, and then we want the arms, and then as the body moves down, then we want the chest to react to the body moving up and down. So let's start with the hips. We're going to leave the feet at the same spot. We're going to start with the hips, which are these right here. Now, if we want these hips to move first, we need to adjust our keys. So we need to take these keys and scoot them to the left. And I'm going to scoot them like pretty far away from now so that you can see how we're changing the timing up. So you can see that the hips are going to start moving back, and then the feet are going to follow. And then our feet are going to finish their motion as the hips are starting to move back the other way. And that's what we're going to have. But you can see right here, we don't actually have any keys set. So our hips stop moving, which we need to fix. So to allow ourselves to be able to move keys forward and backwards, we need to essentially create a second loop using these keys that extends this way so that we can scoot our keys to the left. So the easiest way to do that is by selecting my first and second key for each one of these bones, because you remember these keys are the same as these keys. So I can take this, copy these, line up my playhead here and paste it. And we've essentially just created a half a loop that extends past our timeline. And so now we can take these keys and scoot them to the left. We'll go 5 frames. And so you'll notice that the value here at the beginning is still the same value it is here because we've just offset the loop back. And we've got the same loop here and here. All right, so now we've got our hips moving first, and then our feet, and then our hips, and then our feet, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now let's animate, or let's move the arms. Let's offset the arms so that it goes hips, feet, arms. That means that we need to actually move our arms instead of to the left. We want them to move. We need to move our arms to the right. Now we need to do 2 sets of offsetting here. We need to offset the lower part of the arm from the upper part of the arm, and then we need to offset the entire arm forward. So let's offset our lower arms first. So we need to move our keys to the right, which means we need extra keys over here. So let's copy these keys, paste it up here, and you can see that the timing doesn't quite match up there. So we can select our keys, scoot it over, and actually what we're going to do, let's copy all the keys, paste it here, scoot them over. All right, so now we've completed that loop again, and we can offset our lower arms to the right first. So let's offset those by 5 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can take the entire arm and scoot it forward. We'll say that. Okay, so now if we watch it a little bit slower, you can see that the hips are moving, then the feet, and then the arms are moving. And the bottom part of the arm is offset from the top part of the arm. So it just really helps build some believable motion. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is offset the bounce of the head and the chest. You remember this is a loop and this is a loop. So if we want to, let's see, I think we want to move that to the right. We want to do the same thing that we did with the arms. So we need to copy these, paste it here, scoot it over. All right, so now we've got 1, 2, 3 loops. And we can scoot it forward a bit. Let's make sure that matches up. All right, so the body moves down, and then the chest and the head react to that motion over and over. Okay, great. So we've got our normal walk cycle finished. Let's take a look at what this would look like with and without the offset. Okay, so we've got our animations side by side. We've got the one on the left, which is the animation without offset, and then the one on the right is the one that we actually offset the keys on. Now, the difference in the two is that the one on the left, to me, feels a little bit more robotic because things are starting and finishing at the same time. The movement doesn't feel as fluid, unlike the one on the right that just, it feels like things are just happening way more naturally. But it's up to you to decide which one you like better and what you want to do for your animation. But I would encourage you to sort of think about how to offset the keys, learn how to offset keys in a loop like that, and actually apply this to your walk cycle. Now, we've talked about a normal walk cycle. I'm going to show you a couple things that you can do to change up your walk cycle to get different moods or different speeds, things like that. So let's look at that now. Okay, so I've duplicated the normal walk with offset and created a new animation and renamed it Angry Walk. And I'm going to show you some of the things that you can change up to convey a different mood in your walk cycle. So let's start with the pose of the body. You can actually communicate a lot by just changing up the pose. So instead of having these keys here, I'm just going to delete those and rebuild these. So what I want to do is for an angry walk, I'm going to tilt the body forward a bit like this. Okay, and then I'm going to add the I'll add in that the extra keys and animate the rest after we change some other stuff up. Okay, so we've changed up the body. The next thing that we can do is change up the easing and the timing of things. So for the feet, for this normal walk cycle, they're barely lifting off the ground and they're sort of smoothly coming back into contact with the ground. But what we can do is we can change up how the foot comes back in contact with the ground. So we can keep the Y position the same through here, like this, and then have it slam down onto the ground like that. So all I've done is added one extra key right here, an extra Y key. And then I'm just going to add in a curve that doesn't have any deceleration. So the character is going to slam that foot into the ground like it's stomping. And then we want to do the same thing on the back heel. So it goes up, stays in the same spot, and then slams down to the ground like that. Okay, cool. Now, the next thing that we can do is add a little bit more movement in the hips so the character will drop down a little bit more. Slams down, comes up, slams down again, comes up. All right, so that's giving a little bit, it's adding to the mood. The next thing that we can do is change up the swing of the arms. So right now, our arms are kind of swinging slow and natural. What we can do is change up the easing of the arms and have a little bit more of an extreme curve. So instead of having just this normal cubic curve, we can drag in both sides like this so that the arms swing back and forth a lot more aggressively. All right, so that's got the arms looking a little bit more angry. The last thing that we can do is go in and add that bob to the head and chest. So let's do what we did last time. We'll match it up like this. Reset. We'll copy this loop. All right, and then we need to offset it. So we'll grab this loop one more time and then scoot it forward a little bit. Okay, just like that. And I think we might be off on our timing just a little bit on the arms. I think they're moving just a little too slow. Let's scoot it back just a little bit since we changed up the timing a bit. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Okay, so that's how you can add in a little bit of or change up your walk cycle a little bit. If we wanted to, we could even increase the speed of the walk cycle to make the character look even more upset or a little bit more energetic. Another thing that you can do that I didn't talk about is change up the facial expression. So if you look at some of these walk cycles over here, I've got these two walk cycles here, which are a little bit more happy. This is more of like a happy march, and I've added in a facial expression. This is sort of a relaxed, happy march, and really these changed a few of the things, timings, like I did with the angry walk. But a lot of what sells the emotion of it is the facial expression. So those are a couple of the things that you can do to change up your walk cycles. You can also, speed them up or slow them down to convey a different emotion as well. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. I hope that you learned some things. If you have any questions about this, let me know. The rig is linked in the description below as well if you want to download it, practice with it, or create your own walk cycles. If you do, post them on the community because I'd love to see them. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.